A bit of context first. My cat likes to go outside every day, and in the morning, he follows us to the door, takes the elevator down with us, and then goes about his day outside until we bring him back home again in the evening. Now, my cat isn't the most punctual guy, so it's pretty common for him to stay much later in the neighborhood, sometimes well into the night or for several days. Or he gets bored and doesn't play for more than 2 hours and wants to get back inside. The problem is that we're not home, so he just has to wait. My family and I live in an apartment on the first floor, so my cat's solution is to sit under one of our balconies and meow at the top of his lungs to get our attention. When we're at home, it works perfectly fine. But when we're not, it's a lot less effective. So, our solution was to gently ask our neighbors that have the key to our apartment to bring him up so he doesn't have to wait outside all day. Those that don't have the key sometimes let him inside the building so he's not literally outside, for example when it's raining. Our apartment is a bit special because it's bigger than the others, so to get inside, there are 2 ways when you get in the main hall. 1. Take the stairs to the left and open the door that has 2 locks. And number 2, use the elevator with a special key that goes directly inside of our apartment, and the door only has 1 lock. The cat is used to the second option, and me too, because we're both lazy. But when the neighbors that don't have the key let them inside the building, he goes up the stairs and waits. Since I usually use the elevator from the parking 2 floors below, that means that I don't see him waiting in the hall and he meows outside the door to get me to open up for him, or my dad, or my mom. All around, we have our habits with my parents and neighbors, and it works fairly well. Now, you know how everything goes with my little guy. Anyway, here's what's happened a while ago. My parents like the outdoors very much, so I'm usually left alone in the weekends. Generally, it means taking care of the chores and inviting my friends over so we can have the apartment to ourselves, which is pretty nice. But this time, I was alone, and it was late, around 11 p.m., and I was just chilling in the living room before hearing meowing over the sound of the TV. Someone let my cat in the building, and he's waiting outside the door. I took my keys and started opening the first lock. I don't know about other pet owners, but I know my cat meows by heart. It's a kind of rising meow that's very high-pitched and very cute, and that also has a specific rhythm because I've been hearing it nearly every single day for 5 years. So I stopped. The noise isn't what it usually is. It's too deep and just off. This isn't my cat outside my door, and he's the only cat around that knows he has to wait by the door and scream to be let inside. By that point, I had stopped halfway through opening the door and waited to hear him again, and noticed scratching. My cat never scratches that door. At that point, I am super weirded out by the situation, but the meowing is getting super loud and I didn't want the neighbors to be woken up, so I continued with my key. But suddenly, I heard another noise that freaked me out. A cough. For the record, I'm not a very cautious person, and in my whole 21 years of living in this apartment, I must have looked in the peephole a total of maybe 5 times, but a small part of my brain told me to do it that night, and thank God I did. So I let go of my keys and put my eye against the door and saw it. A man standing there, fucking meowing in front of my door. To say that I was terrified is really an understatement, but my heart stopped. I just stood there petrified for what I felt like an hour, and I don't really know how long it took for me to move again, but eventually, my body just took over, I guess. I did what you expect. I ran for my phone, stood in the corner of the living room, and then called the police. By the time they came there was nobody in front of the door. And I can't even remember when the meowing stopped. And they just took my testimony before telling me to be cautious and left. To this day, I still don't know what the meowing guy wanted, and I'm not sure I want to anyway. I also don't know how he got inside the building, since you need a key to access it, and how he knew that I would open the door if he imitated my cat in front of it. At least, I will be careful from now on. And my cat eventually came back since then, and he's sleeping in my bed as I'm writing this.
I'm new to sharing my weird happenings, but this is so recent that it still has me reeling. I want to scream, but I guess telling you will just have to do. So for some context, sometime in late 2019, I started seeing someone. We'll call him Shu. Shu seemed nice enough and was generally what appeared to be a somewhat normal guy. He kept insisting we move in together, despite only dating for a few months, and the fact that I already owned a house. That should have been enough to tell me to run. But no, I didn't. Shu started showing up at my house late at night without announcing himself or asking to be invited. At first it wasn't so bad, but it became nightly. He then started lying for attention, even going so far as to claim a close friend had died. No, a close friend had not died. He'd show up drunk, demanding attention, and refuse to follow my house rules. If I did let him in, he'd refuse to leave. Long story short, Shu's behavior kept getting worse and worse, showing up drunk from being at bars all night during COVID, demanding my attention, despite knowing I'm high risk. He tried one last time to get into my home, and I cut it off right there. Told him to leave me alone. The next morning, I got a call at 5 a.m. to come into work on my day off. I was annoyed, but I agreed. Then the calls started. Non-stop. I tell him to leave me alone and hang up again and again when it was time to leave for work. I assumed it was my boss calling me to tell me he was here to pick me up. It wasn't. It was Shu. Well, your boss is here for you. Click. Sure enough, 7 a.m., and he was camped out on my porch, and he tried to grab me in broad daylight in front of my boss. This kind of behavior went on for nearly a week. My employees refused to let me walk home after he started showing up at my place of work at closing time and would try and cut me off while trying to get into my house. I found out he kept calling because he could hear my phone ringing through the walls of my old home, trying to locate exactly where I was. Every day, I'd have upwards of 20 phone calls and 50 text messages. I finally called the police after he threatened that I was too poor for a restraining order. The cop drew the line then and there and took it as a direct threat to my well-being. When I got home that day, I noticed cigarette ash all over my porch and a hole burnt into my patio chair. Soon after, I found a window in the basement forced open with a surgical mask on the floor. I told my roommate and my neighbors what had been going on and gave a description of Shu and asked them to be on the lookout. Well, things quieted down a little after that. And after a few months, the phone calls from the VPNs had finally stopped. I was in the car with my housemate earlier this week, and I mentioned that there was a smudge on the garage door. He parks in front of the garage door, not in it. And when he told me, "Yeah, I think a homeless guy was squatting in there for a little while, probably weeks. I found a bunch of clothes in there, and then they disappeared a couple of weeks ago." My heart dropped to my stomach. I noticed tracks in the snow too big for my housemate to have left, but thought, no way, couldn't be. I was shoveling snow all through the night for my neighbours all winter, and he was literally within arm's reach of me, able to see directly into the windows of my house. And yes, I scolded my housemate. I get that he's a kind of guy who doesn't really get it when a woman says, he's dangerous, call the cops if anything weird happens around the house. But come on, man. Shu, I know you're still around. Let's not meet again. For your sake.
This happened around 6 years or so. I'm a male and was 10, and this happened with my brother who was 11. Every Saturday morning, we would skateboard in our backyard since we didn't have school. Unfortunately, one day, my mom and older sister had to go run some errands in the morning, and my dad was at work. This left 3 kids home alone. My mom would tell us not to go outside while being home alone as we were still pretty young, but my brother and I didn't listen that day. We made sure our younger brother stayed inside while we went outside to get a quick skate sesh, and not even 5 minutes later, and we hear a high-pitched voice saying, "Hey! Hey!" over and over again until it got our attention. We looked over towards the gate that connects our house to a sandlot and see 2 guys staring at us. The first guy was so creepy looking that I can't even remember what the second guy looked like. He had pale skin, long black hair, and bright red lips. I remember being so creeped out that he looked similar to Michael Jackson. Anyway, the creepy guy then says to us, "Hey, come here real quick." He said it with such a strong sense of urgency in his voice that it made me really uncomfortable. My brother and I, maybe 15 feet away, and didn't dare get any closer. My brother told me to go inside, and we quickly headed towards the door. Right as we began leaving, I hear the guy shout, "Wait!" I look over and see that both of them start quickly climbing over our gate. My brother bolts inside and I enter right after. I then slam the door shut, and the second I turn the first lock, I can feel the doorknob turn. We quickly turn all the other locks and make sure that the windows are closed. I expected to hear knocking, but it seemed as if they had left. We tried checking through the window, but couldn't get a good view of where the backyard door was. Either way, we didn't dare go outside. We didn't tell our younger brother what happened, so he wouldn't be scared, and we didn't tell our mom because we were scared of getting in trouble. We were dumb kids, I know. Later that same day, I asked my brother if he saw the doorknob turn when I locked it, which he said yes. He said he wasn't sure if it actually happened, but that I confirmed it to him. He also claimed to have seen that the second guy was holding a kitchen knife, but I couldn't confirm. We forgot about it within a few days and never saw them again. And to this day, I wonder what the hell they wanted us to go over there for, and what they would have done if they turned the doorknob just a second earlier. It still creeps me out just thinking about it.
I'm not sure this counts as a let's not meet story, because I didn't actually meet the person, but I can tell you, I really don't want to meet them. My dad and I live together in our own multi-family home in Germany. My dad has a serious lung condition. His lungs produce and trap an excessive amount of mucus. The trapped amount is huge and keeps his lungs from working correctly. It's pretty normal that he has to be picked up by an ambulance every 2 to 3 weeks because he can't breathe anymore. Last week, it was that time of the month. He couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance. He was brought to the closest hospital. Pretty normal for me because this has happened at least 10 times in the last 6 months. So I went to bed after he got picked up on a Tuesday. I went to work the next morning and got a text from him to say he has to stay in the hospital for at least 2 more days. So, approximately Friday. Wednesday evening, I got home from work and played a match of Rogue Company when someone suddenly rang the doorbell. That's unusual because we never have unannounced visitors. I walked to the door and I was about to press the door buzzer to open the main door when I heard, I believe, more than one voice directly in front of my door, so that someone just got past the main door. Weird. I asked, in German, "Hello, who is it?" Silence for 3 seconds. Then a person who sounds like my father, but at the same time doesn't sound like my father, answers. "Misha, it's me. I forgot my keys. Open the door." I thought, okay, in that case. Wait a minute. My dad never calls me Misha, only Mishi. And there was a sarcastic tone in that voice. I didn't trust the situation. I called my father on his phone. If the person in front of the door was my father, his phone should ring, right? Right? It didn't. Big whoop. My father answered. As I suspected, he was still in the hospital. Meanwhile, the 2 people on the other side of the door heard my phone call and started kicking the door. "Let me in, Misha. It's your daddy. Let me in." Thank God that door is reinforced. After I threatened them with calling the police and having a big-ass knife in my hand, they left. I heard their footsteps running down the staircase. I rushed to the window facing the street to check if they had a car or a license plate. Nothing, just a few footsteps in the distance. They never came back. What's weird was that they knew my name, and they knew that my father wasn't home, despite his car still being on the driveway. Shit was hitting the fan when a buddy reported something similar. We called the police. Investigation still in progress.
It was a Thursday in August of 2002. I was 12 years old and had lived with my mom for the past 6 years since she and my dad got divorced. Soon after their divorce, my mom met a new man who moved in with us a few months later. Looking back, I can remember a few times where he'd shown a red flag behavior. Like one evening, maybe in 1999, when that's me and my sisters, we share the weekends between our mom and dad. We were watching a TV show finale very late, and he was drunk and came into the living room. He smashed the TV with his hands, and back then, the TV screens were made of glass, so he cut his hand badly and yelled at us while bleeding. My mom forgave him after he probably came up with a million excuses in the following days. Anyways, in the beginning of 2002, my mom finally decided to have a break in their relationship, and me and her moved into a different apartment a few miles away to get some distance. Me, still being the naive kid who thought she could have 2 dads, wasn't very excited about the idea. I already hated seeing my mom and dad split, and now I had to let go of a man that I'd gotten used to over the course of all these years. I was still just a kid and ignored all the signs, and I even remember resenting my mom for leaving him. As I said, my story starts on Thursday, the 8th of August 2002. I was in school and not feeling very well. I also noticed some type of rash on my hips, so my teacher sent me to the doctor and the diagnosis was shingles. I still see the doctor right in front of me, telling me that if the rash gets worse and goes all the way around my hip, I could potentially die. So I went home for the day and was allowed to stay home the next Friday the 9th as well. On Friday morning, my mom woke me up about 20 minutes before she went to work so she could check on me, have a little breakfast with me, and bring me back to bed to make sure that I'd rest. After she left, I remember lying in my bed and being relieved that the rash had gotten better overnight when I suddenly heard a noise from the hallway. My room was not connected to the hallway, so I could only see into the adjacent room, and since my mom had left a couple of minutes prior, I assumed it was her and called for her. Seconds later, my mom's ex-boyfriend appeared in my doorframe, asking me what I was doing home and why I wasn't in school. After I told him that I was sick and had shingles, he immediately said to me how much he missed us kids and my mom, and how sorry he is for not being there, and that he would love to talk to my mom and make things right. Since I was still unhappy about their breakup, I said stupid shit like I missed him too, that I wanted them to get back together. I can't believe I seriously believed that at some point. After a few minutes of small talk and him pretending to care about my well-being, he made me promise not to tell my mom that he came by before he left. I obviously told her the minute she came home, because I couldn't keep secrets from her, and I also just wanted her to know. And again, me being a stupid 12-year-old did not even question how he even entered the apartment without a key, without someone opening the door for him. I never in a million years would have thought that this might be illegal or inappropriate behavior. I knew that man, and he had lived with us for a number of years now. The same day, just a few hours later, my dad drove me to my grandma's, as I had planned weeks in advance to stay the weekend with her, and I already felt much better. My mom was supposed to pick me back up on Sunday, but on that morning, my mom hadn't answered her phone for about 12 hours, which was unusual. A friend of the family picked me up and drove me home, and still no news from my mom. Since there was a rule in my country that a person has to be missing for 24 hours before breaking the door to the apartment, and she got missing on Saturday evening, the police was only allowed to open the apartment on Sunday evening. My sisters, my dad, and me all went inside. I grabbed all my school supplies and went to the bathroom. After exiting the bathroom, I found my mom's dental prosthesis on a counter in the hallway. Not realizing it could be potential evidence, I picked it up and brought it into the kitchen where my dad was sitting with a police officer. My dad later told me that as soon as he saw the prosthesis, he knew something had happened. My mom had her teeth fixed just a few months prior and would not leave the house without it. After picking up our stuff from the apartment, my dad drove us back into his house and we waited. Monday morning, and still no message from my mom. We did not go to school that Monday, but planned on returning the next day. Tuesday morning, I woke up on my own, even though Dad had said that he would wake us up and take us to school. I was about to go downstairs when I saw the village priest leaving our house. Police had found my mother the night before. On Monday evening, one of my mom's neighbors went upstairs to do the laundry in the attic when he noticed one of the doors being locked. No resident from the apartment building had a key to this specific room, so they had to call the landlord to open the door. I try not to think about what they discovered, since it was the middle of summer and my mom had been dead for around 48 hours. My mom was murdered by her ex-boyfriend after he returned to the apartment on Saturday afternoon to talk. The last person my mom spoke to was my aunt. Shortly after they hung up, my mom said, "There's someone knocking on the door." "It's him again. I gotta hang up. I'll call you later. He gained access to the apartment the same way he did on Friday with a credit card. He was arrested only a day later in a bar after telling the barman that he had done something really stupid. Well, no shit, Sherlock. 8 months later, in April of the following year, me and my older sister had to testify in the murder trial, but before we gave our testimony, our father argued with the court and made sure that we didn't have to face the killer. I remember sitting down in a large and very cold room, my father right by my side, holding my hand, lawyers to my right and to my left, as well as the judge in front of me. I remember being asked about that day he came into our apartment and answering all of the questions as truthfully as I could. They sentenced him to 9 years in prison. Manslaughter in effect was the official cause. 7 of those 9 years he spent behind bars as far as I know, and he moved back close to our hometown, close to where it all happened. Over the years, people have told me that I was lucky. He could have killed me and my mom if she had been still at home that day. If she had just left a few minutes later, maybe she would have ran into him downstairs, or he had gained entry to the apartment while we were still eating breakfast. Lots of ifs and could-haves. I know, I won't be able to change the past, but I sure hope that I can control my future. So, to my mom's ex-boyfriend, the man who does not have a name because he doesn't deserve one, let's not meet ever again. Before telling you my story, there are a few things that you need to know to understand my story better. First, I'm French, so my grammar may lack a little, and also, it happened in the countryside where people don't obligatorily lock their doors because they believe that no one would come in without asking. It's the summer of 2019 and I'm on a vacation in a 2-story villa that my mother's friend owns. So with him, my mother, some of her friends and I were staying in this house to rest before returning to work. After 5 days of living there, they decided to eat in a restaurant, but I decided to stay at home. So after they left, I stayed downstairs eating my dinner and watching TV. I had at that moment a bad feeling because since I watched too many documentaries about sociopaths and read too many stories here, I was like, with my karma, maybe something will happen. Also, this house had French doors. You know, the kind of big windows you can open and use to go in and out, and the most used was the one which had a direct access to the pool in the garden. So, this is the context of where I was, what I was doing, and what I was thinking about. After eating, I decided to go upstairs to lock myself in my room, as I always did, you know, just to have your own bubble. But before that, I went to check the door in front and behind the house and the windows. The problem is that the door was open, but as I said before, it was something normal here, so I didn't think about it too much. Then I checked the windows. One was open, but I locked it and went to my room. Another info here is that when I lock something, I always say a funny sentence like, "The bunny is pink," or else, so when I try to remember the memory, the action stays really clear. I always do that so to avoid doubting my own brain. During the process, I could hear noises inside and outside the house, but since it could be some auditory hallucinations, I prefer not to pay too much attention on this point. After entering my room, I called a friend of mine to have someone to discuss with. After 1 hour, she couldn't hear me anymore, as if I didn't have network anymore. This was weird because during my 5 days in this villa, I never had problems like this. So I started to panic because I had no one with me, nor my phone or my laptop were functioning, and weird noises could be heard. 10 minutes later, I heard some people talking downstairs and my mother yelling my name. So I went down to see them, but I was really shocked. Why? I was the only one to have the door's keys, so how did they enter? I asked and they told me. They answered me in French, but what they said meant, "You closed the door, so we would still be outside if you didn't leave the window of the pool open." The window of the pool open? I am sure I closed it, and I remember what sentence I said before closing it and going to my room. Up until today, my mother still doesn't believe me and just thinks that I was paranoid. I didn't meet anyone that night, fortunately, but I am sure someone was there and nobody can make me doubt that. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I would also like to thank my following patrons: Ralph, Tasha, Fire05, Gabriel, Eskimono, Silver Threads, Sevenfold, Moschino. Thank you very, very much for your support. I really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel further, you can be a patron too. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.